Ladies and gentlemen, gather round, it looks like we're in for another wild ride on the economic roller coaster. Once again, we find ourselves at the mercy of the great geopolitical circus that's dragging everyone along, the return of Donald Trump to the White House. And what do we get? A fresh round of Trump-style trade policies, tariffs, and economic uncertainty. It's like déjà vu, but this time, the stakes for the UK could be even higher. You heard right, folks. We've got Prime Minister Keir Starmer scrambling to prepare for the fallout, or, as they like to say, preparing for all eventualities, as Trump's administration prepares to potentially slap tariffs on global trade, including, oh yes, us. But before you tilt your hat in despair, let's break down this latest saga, because the economic train wreck we're potentially heading into has deep roots, and it's not just about tariffs. The UK's economic woes run deeper, and this whole tariff business is just another brick piled on an already wobbly Jenga tower. But first, let's bring some perspective to the table. This is Boss Economics World, where BS is called out, and we deep dive into economic chaos, laughing, crying, and shaking our heads as we try to make sense of it all. So, quick recap for those of you who've been on a self-imposed news fast. Trump is back, folks. Yes, that Donald Trump. And you know how much that man loves to slap tariffs on anything that moves across borders, particularly if it's coming from China. But here's the real kicker, this time, he's hinting at even higher tariffs, possibly up to 20% on imports to the US. Now, to add some glorious spice to this already flavorful gumbo of confusion, UK Business and Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds is really worried about the impact this could have on the UK. As he said, the exposure, the danger to the UK is actually greater than even some comparable countries. And who can blame him? It's hard not to sweat when someone threatens to put a big OL tax on your goods at a time when the economy is already flatlining. Imagine thrusting the UK, already trying to drag itself out of a quagmire of stagnation, into a grand showdown with a fresh round of economic tensions between the world's biggest economies. Now let's toss some numbers at you. US-UK trade was worth $273 billion in 2022, and UK businesses invested around $500 billion in the US. The UK racked up a goods trade surplus with the US that year, a slim but important $10 billion according to US figures. British data say it's considerably lower. The problem is, trade surpluses tend to put targets on your back when Trump's in charge. We remember how he railed against China's and Germany's surpluses. Trump's protectionism has always been a hallmark of his economic policies. Throughout his previous presidency, the famed trade war with China and steel and aluminum tariffs on the EU left global markets jittery. The UK was relatively unscathed, though tensions around Brexit meant it was treading a fine line. But today, the Starmer-led UK is in a far more precarious spot. Trump's sweeping tariffs may send shockwaves through the British economy, just as the country tries to navigate its post-Brexit and post-pandemic realities. Now, some US insiders are whispering that Trump might not immediately hammer down tariffs on UK trade, with the potential election year optics in mind, knowing that the special relationship between the US and the UK has always been a point of political capital. But with this administration, honestly, we never really know what's a political maneuver versus what's another Trumpian impulse. For all we know, the tariffs could emerge overnight faster than you can say, market panic. Alright, so what tariffs may hit us, if Trump smacks us around as he's prone to do? What's really going on with the UK economy? Why is this even such a major concern? Starmer's Labour government hasn't exactly had a rosy honeymoon. They've been rocked by scandals, in part due to former opposition leaders getting a little too cozy with industry donors and shady freebies, whoops. Then, the pensioners got angry. Throw in some budgetary blunders that pushed the business community over the edge, and well, here we are. But the big problem isn't just a disgruntled populace. The UK's economy is staggering, growing at a snail's pace of just 0.3% in 2024, according to IMF estimates. Inflation? It's slightly cooling down from this summer's 10% hellfire to hover around a still uncomfortable 6.4% in September 2024. The pound has tumbled to a 14-month low. All of this is before Trump's potential tariffs even enter the mix. Add import taxes on top of everything else and we're looking at serious pain, higher import costs, a potential hit to export demand, and businesses faced with even lower profit margins. Speaking of businesses, UK firms are already slashing investments. The Office for National Statistics, ONS, revealed last month that business investment in the UK has flatlined, and CEOs are increasingly pessimistic. Main drivers: the continued post-Brexit regulatory uncertainty, fears of future energy price spikes once caps end, and, believe it or not, accountability-shy politicians alienating them with erratic policies. Thanks, Chancellor Rachel Reeves. Which brings us to this, Labour's dream budget. Chancellor Reeves gave us a wave of spending promises to restore public services, spark innovation, and cut taxes for the middle class. Good on paper, but who's funding this bonanza? Yep, Britain's ballooning debt pile. As of the start of 2025, the UK's public debt now sits at 98.6% of GDP. That's comfortably near Italy territory for a country that prides itself on fiscal prudence. Let's also factor in the spiking borrowing costs. Gilt yields hit highs not seen since the 2008 financial crisis earlier this month, before cooling slightly as inflation moderated. But those old 10-year gilt bonds now yielding 5% mean one thing: financing the government's debts is now a hell of a lot more expensive. Imagine you're running the government budget with your house mortgage costing double the original rates. That's pretty much what we are looking at. And yet, Starmer's team doesn't seem fazed. They're telling us to stay optimistic, growth is coming, prosperity's end isn't nigh. Which brings us to Britain's most precarious economic truth: you can't spend growth into existence when the fundamentals are this weak. If you're betting on a big trade deal or wooing foreign investors as the secret to a successful market strategy, Trump-era tariffs are not the sort of wild card you want thrown into the mix. As if things weren't already messy, Starmer's Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, and Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds are heading off to gallivant at Davos in Switzerland. That's right. What's the go-to solution when the economy is on life support? Hobnob with the global elite at brunch. But in all seriousness, they'll be trying to accomplish two things. 1. Woo foreign investors. Britain is dying for capital, and with weakened consumer confidence, we need to attract more cash inflows. But wait, the question's begging: can they really deliver, with global investors already leery of the post-Brexit mess and the shadow of potential tariffs looming? 2. Patch up trade ties. We all know they're hoping that by charming the pants off some global CEOs, they can find alternative trading partners or convince the US, read, Trump, not to tank their economy. But those Trump ties are awkward. Remember how Labour rallied on the No Trump platform? They've been openly critical of his trade policies before. But surprise, surprise, now they need the US to play ball. Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, tried to play it down. We don't align with those in our government who've branded Trump a threat to democracy. We have a different relationship, Jones argued on BBC. Sounds like damage control to me. At the core of this disastrous economic saga is the UK's lack of a coherent long-term strategy. You see, folks, geopolitics is a double-edged sword, and Starmer is prepped to feel it cut both ways. If Trump moves forward with his tariff rampage, Britain will bleed, plain and simple. As businesses suffer rising costs on inputs, exports dip, and investors shy away from an unstable market, economic performance will continue to stagnate. Without productive growth and increasing productivity, which has been mathematically low, let's face it, any temporary reprieve from places like Davos will be a band-aid on a bullet wound. Comparing major global economies, China is still grappling with property sector collapses, Germany's output is also disappointing, and the US is looking relatively strong. Heck, the US economy grew by 4.9% in Q3 2024. This is the backdrop the UK finds itself facing. Recession looms over the country like a dark cloud, and with trading contests like the US possibly introducing tariffs and markets probably erring on the side of caution, the odds point to one big something: tough times ahead. The icing on the metaphorical cake. Labour is still fumbling around like a deer already caught in the headlights. Bravo, team. Britain is being dragged further into the muck as it tries to revive its economy with nothing but band-aid solutions and empty hopes of sunny trading deals with an unpredictable trade shark like Donald J. Trump. So here we are, prepping ourselves for another phase of Trump-era fireworks, and Britain scrambling for any safe haven that doesn't exist. Folks, buckle up, 2025 is shaping up to be a bumpy one. Until next time, this has been Boss Economics World, where we take the chaos of today's economy and laugh while everything burns. Subscribe, share, and remember, don't trust economists who think recessions can be solved with PR stunts at Davos brunch tables.